Have you ever walked past an old building and wondered what stories it could tell? Sometimes the oldest places hide the greatest secrets. Not treasures made of gold, not maps leading to hidden riches, but secrets that can change the way we see life. This is the story of an old clockmaker, a forgotten shop, and a secret that had been hidden for more than 50 years. My name is Noah Bennett. I was 24 years old when I returned to my hometown after graduating from university. For 6 years, I had lived in the city. Life there was fast. People hurried everywhere. No one seemed to have enough time. Everyone looked at their watches. Yet, nobody seemed to enjoy the moments they had. When I came home, everything felt different. The streets were quieter. The air was fresh. Children still played outside. Neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles. It felt as though time moved more slowly there. One afternoon, while walking through the old market street, I noticed a tiny shop I had never entered before. A faded wooden sign hung above the door. It read, "Bennett and Sons Clock Repair." The paint had almost disappeared. The windows were dusty. Behind the glass, dozens of old clocks stood silently. Some were large grandfather clocks. Others were tiny pocket watches. None of them seemed to be moving. Curious, I pushed the door open. A small bell rang softly. Tick, tick. To my surprise, the shop wasn't silent at all. Hundreds of clocks were ticking together. Each one had its own rhythm. Some ticked quickly, others slowly. Together, they created a strange, peaceful music. The shop smelled of old wood, polished brass, and machine oil. Every shelf was filled with clocks from different countries and different centuries. Some had beautiful carvings. Some were plain and simple, but each one looked as though it had a story to tell. "Good afternoon." The voice came from the back of the room. An elderly man slowly walked toward me. His white hair was neatly combed. His glasses rested low on his nose. His hands were rough but steady. Hands that had spent a lifetime repairing tiny gears and delicate springs. "I'm sorry," I said. "I was only looking." The old man smiled. Most customers say that, and many of them leave with a story instead of a clock. I laughed politely. "My name is Noah." He nodded. "I'm Samuel Bennett." The name sounded familiar. Then I remembered. When I was a child, my grandfather used to mention your shop. Samuel smiled. "He was a good man. You knew him?" "I repaired his favorite pocket watch nearly 40 years ago." I looked around the workshop. "You've been doing this for a long time." 62 years. I stared at him in surprise. "Do you ever think about retiring?" Samuel chuckled. "A clock only stops when it has no purpose. I still have mine." His answer stayed with me. Before leaving, I noticed something unusual. On the highest shelf sat a large wooden clock, covered with a white cloth. Unlike every other clock, it had no price tag. I pointed toward it. "What about that one?" Samuel became quiet. For the first time since I entered the shop, his smile disappeared. "That clock isn't for sale." "Doesn't it work?" "Oh, it works." "Then why keep it covered?" He looked at the old clock for several seconds before answering. "Because some memories are too powerful to display every day." His words filled the room with mystery. I wanted to ask more questions, but something told me not to. Instead, I thanked him and left. As I walked home, I couldn't stop thinking about the covered clock. Why was it hidden? Why had the old man's expression changed? That evening, I asked my grandmother, "Do you know Samuel Bennett?" She smiled. "The clockmaker?" "Yes, I remember him. He was once one of the happiest men in town." "What happened?" Her smile slowly faded. No one knows the whole story. They only know that many years ago, he stopped smiling for a very long time. What caused it? She looked toward the window. They say it began with a single letter. A letter? She nodded. After that, he covered one clock and never spoke about it again. That night, I couldn't sleep. Questions filled my mind. What was in the letter? Who had written it? And why would one clock remain hidden for more than 50 years? The next morning, I found myself standing outside the old shop again. The bell above the door rang as I stepped inside. Samuel looked up from his work. "You came back." I smiled. "I think I'm here for the story." The old clockmaker looked at me for a long moment. Then, without saying a word, he reached for the white cloth that covered the mysterious clock. Slowly, he lifted it away. Samuel carefully folded the white cloth and placed it on the counter. For the first time, I could see the mysterious clock. It was the most beautiful clock I had ever seen. Its case was made of dark walnut wood, polished until it shone softly in the morning light. Golden hands rested on a cream-colored clock face. Tiny flowers had been carved around the edges by hand. Above the numbers was a small silver plaque. On it were engraved 2 words. "For Eleanor." I looked at Samuel. Who was Eleanor? He gently brushed the dust from the clock with a soft cloth. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he smiled, but it was a sad smile. She was the love of my life. His voice was calm, but I could hear years of quiet pain behind it. We met when we were both 19. I pulled up an old wooden chair and sat quietly. Outside, people walked past the shop. Inside, it felt as though the world had become perfectly still. Samuel began his story. "When I was a young man," he said, "this town was very different. There were no smartphones, no computers. People visited one another instead of sending messages. If someone promised to meet you at 3 o'clock, they arrived at 3 o'clock." He laughed softly. "And if they were 5 minutes late, everyone worried." I smiled. "It sounds peaceful." It was. He looked at the old clock again. Eleanor worked at the town library. She loved books. She believed every book contained another person's heart. Every Saturday afternoon, she visited this shop, not because she needed a clock, but because she enjoyed listening to them. I laughed. "Listening to clocks?" Samuel nodded. She said every clock had its own heartbeat. Some were fast, some were slow. But every one reminded her that life keeps moving. His eyes sparkled with memory. The first time we spoke, she asked me a strange question. "Mr. Clockmaker," she said, "can you repair broken time?" I laughed. I told her no one could. She smiled and answered, "Then perhaps we should spend our time carefully before it breaks." Samuel looked toward the window. I never forgot those words. As the months passed, they became close friends. Then, they fell in love. Every evening after closing the shop, they walked through the town square. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they sat quietly on a park bench, watching the sunset. "We didn't need expensive gifts," Samuel said. "We only needed time together." One spring afternoon, Samuel began building a very special clock. It took me almost 2 years. Every tiny gear was made by hand. I wanted it to be perfect because I planned to give it to Eleanor on our wedding day. I looked again at the beautiful clock. So this was the wedding gift? Samuel nodded slowly. Yes. His smile disappeared. Our wedding was planned for the 15th of June. The whole town was excited. My mother baked the cake. My father decorated the church. Eleanor had already chosen her wedding dress. Everything was ready. Everything except life had other plans. 3 weeks before the wedding, Eleanor received a letter. It arrived on a rainy afternoon. Samuel remembered every detail. I was repairing a pocket watch when she walked into the shop. She wasn't smiling. She held the letter tightly in her hands. "What did it say?" I asked quietly. Samuel took a deep breath. It was from a hospital in another city. Eleanor's father had become seriously ill. He had only a short time left to live. She had not seen her father in years. After her parents divorced, he moved far away. Now, he wanted to see his daughter one last time. Eleanor looked at me with tears in her eyes. She said, "Samuel, I have to go." I told her, "Of course you do. Family comes first. We'll postpone the wedding." She hugged me. She promised she would return within 2 weeks. And before she left, she placed her hand on this clock. Samuel gently touched the polished wood. She smiled and said, "When I come back, we'll start our new life together. I promise." I swallowed quietly. What happened? Samuel walked toward the old window. Rain began to fall outside, as if the weather itself remembered the story. I waited. Every day, I wound the clock. Every evening, I stood outside the shop at exactly 6 o'clock. That was the time her train was supposed to arrive. 1 day passed. Then another. A week. 2 weeks. Still no Eleanor. Finally, a letter arrived. Samuel closed his eyes. It wasn't written by Eleanor. It was written by a nurse. My heart sank. The old man spoke almost in a whisper. There had been an accident. Eleanor's father's condition became worse. While traveling back to our town, the bus was caught in a terrible storm. There were many injuries. Eleanor survived for only a few hours. Before she passed away, she asked the nurse to write one final letter. The nurse carefully copied Eleanor's words. Samuel walked to an old drawer. Slowly, he opened it. Inside lay a faded envelope tied with a blue ribbon. I've kept it for 53 years. He held it carefully, as though it were made of glass. I have read it hundreds of times, but every time, it feels like the first. He looked at me. Would you like to know what she wrote? I nodded silently. Samuel untied the ribbon. He unfolded the fragile paper with trembling hands. The ink had faded with time, but the words were still there. He looked at the first line, took a slow breath, and began to read Eleanor's final letter aloud. The old shop became completely silent. Outside, rain gently tapped against the windows. Inside, hundreds of clocks continued to tick together. Tick, tick, tick. Samuel unfolded the faded letter with great care. The paper was fragile. The corners had turned yellow with age. He looked at the handwriting for a long moment before speaking. I haven't read this aloud in many years, he said softly. Then he began. My dearest Samuel, if you are reading this letter, it means I could not keep my promise to return. Please don't be angry with life. Please don't be angry with time. Some things happen that we cannot understand. I wanted nothing more than to stand beside you on our wedding day. I wanted to grow old with you. I wanted to hear the sound of your clocks every morning. But life has chosen another path for me. So I have only one request. Please don't stop repairing clocks. Every clock you repair gives someone more beautiful moments with the people they love. When a grandfather's watch begins ticking again, a family remembers him. When parents hang a repaired clock in their home, their children grow up hearing its gentle rhythm. You don't simply repair clocks, Samuel. You repair memories. Promise me that you will keep doing that. And one more thing. Do not let my absence stop your kindness. Love is not measured by how long we stay together. Love is measured by how deeply we change one another. Thank you for every walk, every laugh, every quiet afternoon, every minute we shared. If time has taught me anything, it is this. Life is not about having more hours. It is about filling the hours we have with love. Until we meet again, listen carefully. Every ticking clock carries a little reminder. Life is precious. Do not waste it. Forever yours, Eleanor. When Samuel finished reading, neither of us spoke. The only sound in the room was the steady ticking of the clocks. I noticed tears in Samuel's eyes, but he wasn't crying because of sadness alone. He was remembering a love that had never truly left him. After several minutes, I finally asked, "So, this is the secret?" Samuel smiled gently. "Not yet." He walked toward the beautiful wooden clock. He opened a small hidden door in its base. Inside was a tiny velvet box. He carefully lifted it out and placed it in my hands. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside the box was a silver key. It was small and beautifully made. Attached to it was a handwritten note. "For the next keeper of time." I looked at Samuel with surprise. "I don't understand." He sat down beside me. After Eleanor died, I almost closed this shop forever. I thought my life had ended. But then I remembered her letter. So every morning, I opened the store. I repaired one clock, then another, then another. Each family who walked into this shop carried a story. A father wanting to repair his father's watch. A daughter bringing in her mother's old clock. A young couple buying their first anniversary gift. I realized something. He smiled. Time never belongs to us. We only borrow it. And while we have it, we should use it to make someone else's life better. I looked around the workshop again. Now it felt different. It wasn't just a repair shop. It was a place where memories were protected, a place where love continued to live. Samuel reached into another drawer. He handed me a small notebook. The first page contained a list of names, hundreds of names. Beside each one was a date. Who are these people? They're everyone I've helped over the last 60 years. He pointed to one name. That little boy grew up to become a doctor. Another. She became a teacher. Another. He repaired his grandfather's clock with me when he was 12. Now he owns a clock shop in another town. I smiled. "You've changed a lot of lives." Samuel shook his head. "I only reminded people of something they already knew. That time is the most valuable gift we ever receive." A few weeks later, I returned to the shop. The door was locked. A small sign hung in the window. "Closed today." I felt worried. Just then, Mrs. Jenkins, who owned the bakery next door, walked over. "You didn't hear?" "Hear what?" "Samuel retired yesterday." I smiled. He finally decided to rest. She nodded. "But before he left, he asked me to give this to you." She handed me a small envelope. Inside was the silver key and a short letter. "Dear Noah, when you first walked into my shop, I saw curiosity in your eyes. That curiosity reminded me of myself when I was young. The clocks don't need me anymore. They need someone who understands that every second matters. Whether you become a clockmaker or not, remember this. Never be so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. Visit your family. Forgive quickly. Laugh often. Tell people you love them while they can still hear your voice. Because one day, every clock stops. But kindness keeps ticking forever. Your friend, Samuel Bennett. I folded the letter slowly. That afternoon, I visited my grandmother. We drank tea together for hours. I called old friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I apologized to someone I had quietly been angry with. I began spending less time staring at screens and more time with the people I loved. Months later, I walked past the old clock shop again. The sign above the door had changed. It now read, "The Bennett Clock Workshop, established 1964. Below it, someone had added a simple sentence in gold letters. "We don't repair clocks. We help people treasure their time." I smiled. Samuel's secret had never been hidden inside the clock. It had been hidden inside his heart. The clock was only a reminder. The real lesson was much greater. Time is the one treasure that every person receives, rich or poor, young or old. We all receive 24 hours each day. The difference is not how much time we have. The difference is how we choose to spend it. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Call your parents. Visit an old friend. Read that book. Learn that language. Follow your dream. Because yesterday is a memory. Tomorrow is a promise. But today is the greatest gift of all. That is why we call it the present. Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Fluent English Hub for more original English stories that help you improve your English while learning meaningful life lessons. And always remember, the richest person is not the one who owns the most time, but the one who uses every moment to create memories that never fade.